Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to this morning's legislative breakfast. My name is Bill Davies, the moderator for this year's series of legislative breakfasts that are again hosted this year by the Vermont North Country Chamber of Commerce. And in behalf of the Chamber, I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm pleased to recognize Dan Pellerin, who is the Vice President of the Vermont North Country Chamber of Commerce. And if there's anyone here today who does not receive email notifications of these meetings, please make sure that Dan has your email address before leaving this morning. This morning's breakfast is being sponsored by the Northeast Kingdom Community Action. I'm sure that I speak for everyone in extending our appreciation toward Northeast Kingdom Community Action for sponsoring this breakfast. And in behalf of everyone here, I'd like to call upon Jennifer O'Farrell, who is the Executive Director of NEK-TV, to give us a few words. And I like to call upon people before they have any time, any advanced knowledge that they're going to be called upon to speak.
Good morning. Thank you. I'm Jenna O'Farrell. I'm the Executive Director of Northeast Kingdom Community Action, and we are appreciative of all our legislators and all of our community members that make up the Northeast Kingdom and I don't know if you know about community action and what community action does, but community action is we're federally funded through 1964 through Johnson's War on Poverty and has been federally funded since, and we are an anti-poverty agency. And here in Orleans and northern Essex County, we provide food assistance, crisis fuel, warmth program, homeless and housing insecurity support. We have Head Start programs, we have youth services, we have economic equity and stability programs, but we do a lot of work with community members throughout the Essex County, Caledonia, and Orleans. So we are happy to be here. We're happy to be part of the community and very appreciative of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sure there are not all that many people who remember that before OXA there was NEK-TV. And I have to just share a little personal history. When I was in law school, which was just a few years ago, I had an opportunity to work one summer in connection with NEK-TV. Just a few years ago. The next thing that I'd like to, or next group of thanks that I'd like to extend to Terry DeFazio and Todd Perano, who are doing their electronic thing to make these breakfasts available to those folks who are not able to come to the breakfast or don't like to get up quite as early as they need to make it here. But again, thank you, Terry, Todd, for making the proceedings available to others. I also see that I think Ed Barber, who's here in behalf of the Newport Daily Express, to provide a report to the written media. And if I'm overlooking anyone, please accept my blaming the lighting in this room. If I had not seen Ed when I was over that direction, I wouldn't have a clue that that's who's sitting in his spot. At each of our breakfasts, we have, or I shouldn't say at each of our breakfasts, the schedule for each of our breakfasts is to have one state senator and two state representatives present. We allow our featured guests the opportunity to make 10-minute or so presentations of the issues that they are facing in Montpelier this year and their observations as to what is going to be happening during the rest of the legislative session. After the legislators have had an opportunity to speak, we open the floor to questions and comments from you, the citizens of Orleans County. And we always recognize anyone who wishes to speak first before we recognize somebody a second time. And when we get to the speaking or asking questions portion of the program, if you have a question or comment, please come to this general area and line up. Because usually what happens is we have trouble getting somebody to be the first person asking a question or making a comment, but then all of a sudden at the time we're ready to close, there are all sorts of people that have questions and comments. Again, I certainly extend our appreciation to, now I've got myself confused, Northeast Kingdom Community Action or OXA or, you know. I know, I just had to say that. It just shows my youth. But again, extend our appreciation to you for sponsoring this morning's breakfast. Again, as far as the state senator is concerned, I'd like to call upon Senator Russ Ingalls.
Good morning. It's good to see everybody. And, you know, just kind of listening to Bill and, you know, the thanks that he gives. I mean, the thanks is really to everybody that comes here and participates. I think this legislative session, we've seen a lot of community outreach and, you know, for concerns of what we've got going on. I want to thank the Chamber, of course, for what they do as far as putting this on. It's very, very nice. It gives everybody an opportunity. And I want to thank NECA. I want to thank NECA for not only doing this, but for what they do for the community. You know, the caring hands that they have throughout is you speak for the people who just can't speak for themselves. And I think that as a legislator, I didn't prepare any remarks today. I just thought, you know, after taking 10 days off of a brutal first half of the session, it was just nice to come here and to see everybody and not kind of feel the pressures that we've felt. So just to kind of talk freely. But getting back to what NECA does and a lot of what the outreach groups do for the communities, is really kind of how I shape my thoughts and my as I move forward thinking about how a bill is going to be hurtful or impactful to the state of Vermont. And the way I look at it is how is it going to protect the most vulnerable? How is this bill going to hurt or help the people who just really don't have the means to speak for themselves? I've been fortunate. There's a lot of people in this room probably have been fortunate in life. Life has been good. We've worked hard. It's not that everybody doesn't, but we've had some successes, and there's probably not too much that can go on down in Montpelier that's going to affect my life in a negative way. But I always think about how it's going to affect the people that just are clawing their way up, trying to find positiveness of getting up every day and starting their day, whether they have health issues to where they can't participate in the workforce, or they are in the workforce, maybe at a job that doesn't pay them enough, and maybe they're working classes at night to try to get themselves into a better position. And I think about those people who are just looking for positiveness on how they can live their lives, how they can be here, and how they can be excited about getting up and starting their day. And at the end of the day, have they felt like it was a positive day? And I think there's so many hurtful things that are going on in Montpelier. As I did a speech on a Senate floor, It's not, there's so many things out there that can be harmful, but the number one thing can be politics. Politics can be very, very harmful to Vermonters when you're sitting there and you're trying to craft this narrative about what you believe the world should be like, but you're kind of forgetting about what the world really is. And the world really is people getting up every day, trying to do their best, trying to make an impact, and just trying to have a good day. And there's so many hurtful things out there that could that can cause them not to have a good day. And as I look at legislation that comes through, those are the people I think about. I think about the people who don't have a voice for themselves. Had it not be for NECA and other groups, are we there to help them, or are we there to hurt them? And lots of times we're there to hurt them. And not that people are really kind of thinking that's what they want to do, but they're really not really thinking about the people who can't speak for themselves. We just finished up, as you guys have heard, as the ones that have been attending this meeting. We've had a resolution of the what we call the Unaffordable Heat Act. I will tell you that without participation from the public of recognizing how harmful this bill was to Vermonters, it never would have happened. And even with all of the letters and emails and phone calls and correspondences and direct contacts that these legislators have, there were still 19 senators out of 30, and there would have been 20, but one wasn't present, that would have voted for this bill. And it is just unbelievable. And I think of what we've found, and the thing that I really try to impress upon people, not everybody's voted for me. Not everybody has. But as I said to you the other day, if we were to stand together and we were to spend 20 minutes together and we were to talk about 20 things, we'd agree on 75% of them. Even though we're not in the same party, we're not in the same belief systems, but we can find common ground enough to go. This this Unaffordable Heat Solution Act was just a bill that was going to do exactly what I said when I started speaking. It was going to pummel the people who had no choice to do anything other than pay higher heating fuel, and that's just the way that it is. So, with your activisms as far as contacting legislators and being a voice for yourselves and for people that didn't have a voice, I commend you, because that's how politics is supposed to work. We have, and so the resolution that we got on that is we would have liked to overall have killed that bill, and maybe we're going to get another chance at it, because it's not dead yet. But what the Senate was able to do was the Senate was able to put enough pressure on some of these Democrat senators to turn this into a study. Because that's the only way that they were going to be able to pass it. So a $1.7 million study to get the facts of what they were trying to tell you this bill was going to do. So what happens now is in January of 2025, this bill comes back to the legislator as a bill where we start all over with it again, and they're supposed to have the facts and figures of what this bill will do. Something that should have happened before it ever even got this far. They should have been able to tell you what this bill would do and how it would be impactful to you, and how it would help you versus how it would hurt you. So we put it into a study. This bill has gone to the House now. The House will do with whatever it does. They're calling this amendment that we did to turn it into a study as a check back. And we have the words of a couple senators that if this bill comes back from the House without that check back in it, that they will join us to vote against it. Now, the bill will still pass. But the governor says he'll veto it, and then we should have enough senators at that point in time to override the veto to keep this bill from being harmful to Vermonters. A couple other things. Bill gives us 10 minutes. I know I'm getting close on my time. A couple other things that we're going to be looking for on this session starting tomorrow. We have paid family leave. There's two different proposals out there. There's one that's really just unsustainable, and there's one that the governor has proposed. And maybe just because the governor's proposed it and he's in my party, it doesn't mean that that's the right one. But I know on the other one, it talks about raising taxes at a time that we just spent $10 billion of free federal money, and then there's a move to raise taxes in Vermont. I think that's unsustainable. So we're going to be working on that. There is no question that there is a flavor in Vermont for some form of paid family leave, and I think that we can carve out a solution between the both of them and come up with something. But again, it has to be something that's affordable, and it has to be something that is going to actually have some benefit to the people that need it most. There are some people out there that just don't need the help, the type of help that we sometimes propose. There's some people out there that do very, very, very well. There's people, again, and I hate to put myself, because I am a simple guy. I am. I just go to work every day. I work hard. I've had successes. But there are some of these programs that I just don't need. I don't need, and therefore you shouldn't write them for me. You should concentrate on the people that need them the most. So we'll be working on that. There's a child care bill that's coming through. And again, we got to just find out a way that we can be most helpful with that. But I want to point something out about child care. The party that was in power 3 years ago or 2 years ago, they were going to fix child care. They were going to fix child care. And what they did is they made it so onerous to own a child care center that 26% of them went out of business. They're unsustainable. And the ones that are there now are struggling. So if we just looked back on, again, politics, how we're going to fix something, maybe we need to revisit to go back to, maybe we need to go back to what we did to harm those child care centers and stop that. Because to be honest with you, there wasn't a need or a desire, or there wasn't any danger that was going on with these centers. It was just, again, politics of how it should be to make it better. And it didn't make it better. It hurt it, and it put us at a disadvantage to where now we're talking about, well, we're going to fix it even better because the first fix didn't work. Even though we put a quarter of you out of business, we're going to make it better. And the way we're going to make it better is to spend millions and millions and millions of dollars. And what happens when we get that wrong? What happens when we get that wrong? We haven't fixed the problem. We still have people that you're working with every day trying to help their lives to be better. And now we've spent millions of dollars. We've raised taxes. We've done this. We've done that. And we're still in a mess. So, I would say again to all of you citizen legislators who will send us notices about what what you believe in and what you think we ought to support. Take a good hard look on what really is going on. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. Spend the time to look at what's going on. See how you can be impactful. Do your homework, and don't let the world of politics make you become something and believe in something that really probably isn't going to fix the problem. So with that, I'm going to let it be because I think that sometimes we talk too long and all the questions, once you get started, they don't get answered, so we'll leave some time for that. But thank you everybody for coming.
Thank you, Senator Ingalls. Now I'd like to call upon Representative Larry Labor. Larry was not scheduled to be a speaker this morning, but the legislators who were unable to come. So again, in fairness, Larry hasn't had hours to prepare, but I know Larry well enough to know that he can tell us the important stuff off the cuff. Representative Labor.
Thank you, Bill. It's the first time in my life I've wished that Russ Ingalls would talk longer. That said, I'd like to elaborate on some of the points that he brought up because they have come through I'm serving this term on housing and general affairs. General affairs is a catch-all. If they don't know where to put it, they throw it at us. One of the things that Russ mentioned was the paid family leave proposals. Both of them have come before our committee. One of them is more sustainable than the other, and the other one is a pipe dream. You're looking at a minimum of 12 weeks paid family leave at 100% of your normal wages, paid for by an increase in your tax rate, half by the state and half by the employee. The rate was 0.55%. Divide that by 2. That comes out to a fair chunk of change, about $175 million worth of change per year for the almost 7,000 employees. Okay. The other proposal is the governor's proposal. Same type. I believe it was 6 weeks, not 12 weeks, and 60% of your wages. So there's a little encouragement there to get back to work, where at 100%, there's very little. There's enough programs out there to assist people with EBT cards or whatever, rent assistance, phone assistance, heat assistance, so that if you're getting 100%, you can probably make it through. 12 weeks is only 3 months. What are you going to do after that? In the meantime, you've probably found another job. So the employers are taking it on the nose also. The other one was what Russ mentioned, child care. If you look at the cost of child care today as compared to when we raised our family of 4 children, it's considerably different. You have transportation costs. You have insurances that have knocked out, as Russ said, a number, 25%, somewhere in that vicinity, of providers that just hung up their shingle. You can't afford it. Just isn't working. That creates a problem, and I hope they get to address it. Are there any contractors in here? Because this next bill is going to affect them. This will be H332. If you get your computers out and take a look at it, it's a building code bill. We have a lot of building codes in the state of Vermont, electrical, plumbing, whatever, structural, architectural. But there's no one agency responsible for doing routine inspections on the work. So before the sheetrock panel goes up, there's no electrical inspector to go around and look at the electrical wiring that's behind it before the sheetrock goes up. That's just one example. So they're looking at covering electrical, fire codes, plumbing codes. There's $225 million budgeted for this bill. So you're looking at municipal buildings, those would be under commercial code. You have residential buildings, which will take up most of the time. A lot of this is going to fall on RPCs, your regional planning commissions. They're the ones that are going to be probably looked at to do the enforcement. As there is no enforcement now, I don't know if any contractors have explained to you, I didn't know this until just recently. Back in the 30s, there were balloon structures for residential houses. So instead of having an 8-foot 2x4, they ran 16s with no fire blocking. So if you have a wood stove that lights up or a dryer vent that plugs up and catches fire, that fire goes right up that chimney because there's no fire blocking. And I'm not talking structural chimney, I'm talking the wall. Well, when that happens in Franklin County just 2 years ago, the husband and the wife were on the first floor, the kids were on the second floor. Guess who got out and guess who died? The 2 kids. That's the genesis of this bill. So it's gone to a study committee to see what can be done in terms of organization to put the structure together. $125,000 has been allotted for the build-out of this inspection and structural examinations. OPR, Office of Professional Regulation, they will probably get engaged in this because all of those other contractors and subs generally are regulated by OPR. But there's no central clearing point yet. Standard time. How many people would like to see not having to change your damn clocks? I see a show of hands. Now, H267, that's an interesting bill. You'd think it would be very simple just to make the change. Not quite so simple. As it turns out, if Vermont becomes a strong little state and becomes the first in New England, it's the only one. So if our time could be an hour off from our neighbors in New Hampshire, in Maine, New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, it would almost have to be the NEK grows to 6 states in order to make this work. So 267, I think, is going to get bogged down. Cannabis. The Cannabis Control Board has got a recommendation there to lift the cap on the concentration of THCs in products that are sold. Well, they finally, there's a group that is finally smartened up and called Colorado. And they found out what Colorado's experience has been with elevated concentrations. They concluded that the high-potency THC is associated with higher rates of psychiatric disorders, schizophrenia disorders, anxiety disorders, and at 3 in 10 users of high-potency cannabis become addicted. Gee whiz. This is not talking about medical grade. This is talking about recreational abuse on our young people. Now, some good news. The governor just signed 2 individuals from this area to different commissions. District 7 Environmental Board is now going to be staffed by a Dexter Randolph from Newport Center. And the State Emergency Response Commissioner is now going to be a David Patnode from Derby Line. So locals are going to have a say.
Dexter Randall died 2 years ago.
Randall is what was in my email. That's all I can tell you. I can look at my laptop, it's over there, so I can check it again.
He used to be on that board.
Well, maybe he's been exhumed, is back on it. What can I say? Oh. Is there a junior? Yeah. Okay, thank you. The state is releasing mini grants in the sum of $4,000 that municipalities can access real easily. All you got to do is fill out the application grant. That is being released this coming week. There's, let's see. See if I can find the dollars that were tied to that, other than the $4,000. It's to help towns and municipalities develop the capacity to write grants. That will probably be done through assistance through the VLCT or the RPCs. The regional planning committees should get the information from the state very shortly on the application times. It's first come, first serve. So if you have any municipalities that are looking to build out a community house that was built in 1910 and it needs some help, it needs love, this is the type of $4,000 grant that can get the schematics and somebody to look at the building and give you an idea of what to put out for an RFP to get the job done. Preservation Trust has grants after that to help the community pay for it, so keep the tax rates down. This pinch hitter's all done, Bill. Thank you for your time. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Larry, for pinch hitting. Now, the fact of the matter is you pinch hit for one, but you're supposed to pinch hit for two. So that means, are you ready to do the second time now, or you want to do it a little later?
No, I'm going to take a rain check.
Okay, we're now open to questions and comments from the members of the audience. And those asking questions or making comments are asked to come up here, and when it's your turn to speak, to tell us your name and what town you are from and to whom your question or comment is directed. If you don't indicate to whom it is directed, I will assume that it's directed to both of the legislators who are in attendance. And what we do is we allow, one person to raise questions and so on and so forth, and that person will not be afforded a second opportunity at this morning's breakfast until all of the people who want to ask questions or make comments have had their first bite of the apple. Now, due to circumstances beyond my control, I will need to be leaving the breakfast a few minutes before its scheduled conclusion. So ahead of time, I'm thanking Dan Pellerin for filling in for me for the last part of the breakfast. Unfortunately, Vermont Superior Court does not seem to think that legislative breakfast takes priority over, a court hearing. But, okay, first.
Ed Barber, Newport Daily Express, live in Derby. This is for all our legislators. Back in January, my waste hauler increased my rate from $8 a month for a once-a-month pickup plus a $1.61 surcharge to $20 for a once-a-month pickup and a $3.61 surcharge. Casella has a virtual monopoly on waste in our state. Now they're vertically integrating by buying up independent waste haulers, so they're getting the garbage from as soon as it leaves your house till it gets to the landfill. They can continue to increase their rates because of the lack of competition. They bought up Austin's last year, and when they bought Austin's, they also hired away 2 drivers from Dave's Rubbish and Roll-Off. Dave's couldn't replace those 2, so Casella took over those routes. If we keep allowing Casella to integrate that way, they're going to have a complete monopoly, and we're going to pay the price for it. I'm wondering if our legislators should think it's time to start to intervene on our behalf and even consider having them go to the Public Utility Commission to turn around and say, if you want a rate increase, just like our electric utilities, that you have somebody who can manage it. Or maybe we should consider having the state take over. But I want to ask our legislators what their thoughts are on how to keep this monopoly from continuing to grow underneath our noses and we see it happening, and we're letting it happen. So that's my question to all the legislators in here. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Ingalls.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. Anytime you decrease competition, you have a free reign to costs just start to creep up. That does happen. Ed, thanks for letting us know that. To be fair about that, probably wasn't on the top of the radar, but as listening to you speak about that, it's just common. That's what you're going to see. But I can promise you that come tomorrow we'll start addressing that. And I do like the idea of when you have somebody that is as powerful, and we have the only dump in the state in our communities. I said when I first started running a long time ago that I thought that if we were the community that was willing to have the only dump in the state, and here's what I really want people to understand: it's not just it's a small fraction of the state using that dump. It's the vast majority of the money is coming from companies that haul from outside of our region. I had a acquaintance of mine who was down in Virginia one time and happened to see one of the trucks that we see on the roads with the initials of we know what the trucks are, and started talking to the driver. And the driver said, he said, I'm going to a place that you probably don't even know. And the guy said, let me guess, Coventry, Vermont. And he said, oh, how'd you know that? Well, I live there. He said, oh yeah. He said, I'm hauling 5 to 7 loads a week out of New York City up there. He said, I just happened to be hauling this one he was down in Virginia, so whatever. So, I mean, we're hauling waste from all of the Northeast, to our little corner of our state. That's going to be a problem. I will look at that. And again, just hearing about it for the first time, certainly I don't want that to happen. As I've told you when I stand up here before and tell you that I worry most about people who don't have the means, I'm pretty sincere about that. And I'll put some attention to it. Thanks.
Representative Labor.
I've talked to Ed several times. This is the first time I've heard about the rate increase. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Maybe it'll fall into general. It certainly hasn't fallen under energy, although they are an energy producer, but it hasn't surfaced as that. So I'm going to join Russ in this initiative and kick a few stones around. There are monopolies, but I don't know if we have a corner on the monopolies and why it can't be shared by other states. Why should we be their consistent dumping ground? I'm standing on a white lake right now, but more people in the summertime would like to enjoy that lake with a lot less pollution. So, yes.
We can't hear you. Can you put the mic up? That's not a PA system, sir.
Oh.
No. That's recording. Speak up, please.
So you didn't hear my first speech either? Is that what you're telling me? I can't say any more about the waste issue until I look into it. I do want to continue thanking NECA for their presence in the Kingdom. Last fall, my wife and I were touring, leaf peepers, if you will. And it was in October. The incident that I'm about to relay, I can only give you summaries of because I don't want to violate any HIPAA issues. But in that touring, I came across the outlet of Echo Lake. And at the outlet, there was a lady, a naked lady, washing, bathing in the fishing access ramp. All of her clothes, including the bedroll and a pillow, were on the guardrails drying out. She was sleeping in a tent, and it had rained the night before. So the first agency I contacted said, was there any evidence of a child there? No. There was no toys visible, no child scattered around, no soiled diapers in the waste container there. Oh, well, we don't get engaged unless there's children available that need protection. Given that, I contacted the sheriff, and she said, well, she is on our radar screen, but, it's not in our wheelhouse yet. Okay. Well, given that, go to the next agency. And it happened to be NECA. So I called. Young lady, and this is on a Saturday morning now. I called, and a young lady answered the phone and had a lot of empathy for the situation. She says, but I'm all alone. Another staffing issue. But my supervisor's coming in. So she and her supervisor showed up at Echo Lake around 1 o'clock that afternoon, same day. Interviewed the lady. Well, you can't force movement without being arrested for kidnapping. But they had arranged for the protection for this lady in a suitable housing. She just didn't want to go. She was very happy where she was. Well, I suspect that night changed her mind because it got down to 28 degrees, and I don't know of too many tents that have insulation. Another tour, Monday morning. The lady is gone. But I want to talk to you about Vermonters. There were Vermonter neighbors there. They saw her dilemma. They brought the firewood and some stones. They made a fire pit on the boat access. Totally against the law. The next neighbor brought over vegetables that didn't need to be cooked. They could be hand washed and eaten raw. And that was what was sustaining her. That's the Vermont way. Thank you, NECA.
Next.
Good morning. My name is Laurie Grimm, and I'm a resident of Newport City. So I have one comment, maybe directed at NECA, maybe our legislators, and then two questions. So my comment is this about child care and about young people. I have a 21-year-old friend, single mother of a 1-year-old, who has had to move back in with her mother who rents. She's applied for assistance, can't get it because she has to include her mother's income in the household. And I think that's wrong. This is a young woman who's lost her job due to circumstances beyond her control and is now living at home but can't get the assistance that she needs because she has to include her mother's income. And her mother has a good job, but her mother can't afford to cover her and her rent. So that's my statement for today, and I hope that the child care situation can be solved because she is in that position of, in order to get a job, she needs child care. But the only thing she could find living in Newport City was a friend who lives in Albany, Vermont. She would have to drive to Albany every day to take her 1-year-old, then go to her work, then go back to Albany to pick up her child. And this is a huge problem. So that's my statement. The questions that I have, one is concerning the contractors, Mr. Labor, and maybe Mr. Ingalls as well. When the state considers adding more regulations, all it does is impact those builders, homeowners who are looking to do work on their homes. Our son had the opportunity to purchase a home last summer, but his purchase was delayed for over a month because he could not get a home inspector in Troy to inspect the home. Thankfully, the seller agreed to wait the extra 30 days. But this is way too common for the state to put regulations on our buildings that create an issue. So I want to know who's going to do the inspections. We don't have enough home inspectors. So how are we going to get electrical inspectors to come out and inspect homes just because the state says, I agree, I saw the story on the news, I agree that these are problems, but they've got to solve the base issue of who's going to do it before we put all this stuff into place. The next question I have is concerning thank you for the Unaffordable Heat Act, because my husband and I just replaced a 12-year-old wall-mounted on-demand heating system, propane for our house, 4 years ago with a 30-year propane boiler. Was not cheap, not the most expensive thing you can get, but I work, my husband's retired, we own our home. How am I going to afford to replace that? The article said something about saving $7,500 over a certain period of time. It's going to cost me that much to retrofit my house. And I can't imagine what's going to happen. We talk about helping low income, which I can get behind. But what about those of us who work? What about landlords who own buildings that are going to have to do this? And then they're going to turn around and charge their renters. And the whole bill talks about helping low income, but I didn't see anything in there about helping those people who are providing homes. I'm sorry, but friends who are also trying to find apartments. I saw one come up the other day, $650 a month for a 2-bedroom, 1-bath in Newport City. I almost fell over. I thought, oh, wow, amazing. Heat and hot water is not included. And they're going to be paying basically $1,200 a month when you include all of that. So we've got to solve some of those issues, and just throwing something, I'm happy to know that they've put it on hold. But my question, Mr. Ingalls, is who's going to be doing the research? Because what I'm afraid of is the same people who wrote the bill, the same people who passed all of the stuff a couple of years ago for our, green gas emissions and all that kind of stuff, that they're going to be the ones that are doing the research. And I want real people doing the research. I want both sides included in that conversation. And are we going to be able to get that?
Senator Ingalls.
So I'll answer your last question first. Who's going to be doing the research? You folks are. You folks are. You folks are going to be the ones that are going to say, we can't afford this. But we already know we can't afford it. It's the 70 cents figure that they said the heating fuel will go up was just as close, as fair as an estimate as could be made. And that wasn't made by the people putting this bill together. That was made by the administration. That was made by the administration to at least as best that they could to figure out what it was going to be. We know it won't be less than that. So, you are absolutely positively correct when you say that you want to know who's going to be doing the research. It's going to be favorable to the people trying to pass the bill. So you all know you can't put lipstick on a pig. You just can't do that and make it more attractive. This isn't going to get any more attractiveness. This is what I really want everybody to understand. Vermont is leading the nation in green energies, technologies, EV adoptions, car chargers. We're spending 640,000 people are spending $400 million a year to make sure that Vermont stays green. to make sure that, our waters, are cleaner. We've got, on top of that, we've got, I think, another $300 million on clean water initiatives. We have, you start going out of this $8.4 billion budget, and I would dare say, we probably are spending $1 billion a year in Vermont, trying to make sure that we leave the world in a better place than the way we found it. I'm not even going to say climate change. I'm just going to say that we are trying to leave it in a better position than the way that we found it. We're trying to get rid of phosphorus in water. We're working to winterize homes. We are, I think now, 11% of our energy does come from renewable sources. It doesn't stop on the other side. I mean, they got rid of the nuclear power. Now they think nuclear power is a good thing, but they got rid of nuclear power. I'm going to tell you, no matter what it says, nuclear power, unless it's produced elsewhere and brought into the state, will never come back to the state of Vermont. But now they're after biofuels, and that's the fancy name for wood. They've already told Burlington Electric Department, the Menil generating plant, that they do not want them to burn wood anymore, and they don't want them to burn natural gas anymore. They need to get done doing that. And then we have a little place in Rygate that's burning just unusable wood product that's going to be just left in the woods to rot and create the methane that bothers them. They're producing power in Rygate with that wood. It's not valuable anywhere else. It keeps about 100 families in business by doing that. And there's the Climate Council, and then they have 2 subcommittees, and they're trying to get rid of biomass. So you're very well to be concerned about what's going to go on. I hear your stories about having already invested monies into trying to live your life, trying to stay warm in this climate, and it's going to be people like you. And I think that you'd be the first one to admit to yourself that you're not poor. You're not wealthy, but you're just trying to make it work. You're trying to figure out, how can I live my life in this state and be happy, and then be able to afford just to stay here, just to the privilege of living in this state. I just want to be able to be here, and I want to be comfortable, and I want to be a participant in this community. And now you're putting this burden on me. It's just not going to happen. And it won't happen on my watch as far as anything that I can do. But the real source of, no matter what comes up, the real source of how are we going to make sure that study is real, it's going to come from you folks. We already know what they're trying to tell us, what they're trying to sell us isn't viable in this state. So we just need your input. You can't stop. You've got to make your voices heard. And I hope I answered that. And so on the inspections, there's something that we're really, really kind of forgetting. What about local control? Why does the state have to come in over the top of you? Why does the state have to come into your communities and demand that you do this when your community hasn't demanded it yet? We have zoning. We have the abilities to police ourselves. We know what we want to do. I mean, there's some communities around here that don't have zoning, and they like it. They like it that way. And if it becomes a problem to where they think that they should have zoning, well, they're going to get together as town folks. They're going to get together as a community. They're going to get together like a lot of communities did and have a town meeting, and they're going to say, hey, listen, I think that we need to have better controls. I think that we need to do this as a community to protect ourselves. We don't need the state to come in and save us when we have that ability to do it ourselves. And that still gets back to you folks being involved in the decision-making process. You folks coming and making your voices heard within your communities. And I think that, we do a pretty good job of that. I think that we know every community is different. We know how it is. There is a big backlog. I think you might have confused a couple issues. One is with a home inspector. That is a licensed position within the state, and that is when you buy a house. There's licensed home folks out there. your son should not have waited 30 days. There's enough people out there. There really is. I'm in that business. I'm in real estate. I'm doing a home inspection this morning. We had it scheduled in 48 hours. And I sell 100 properties a year. We don't have those problems. So if there was some type of breakdown in that process, which is regrettable. But you do raise a good point. Where are these inspectors going to come from that are going to come in and inspect fire marshal inspections, electrical inspections, heating inspections, all of that? They're not there. They're not available. You are just going to create a bunch of positions within the state at $120,000 a year, and it's going to slow the process down, and it's going to cost money, which is going to come to the last part of what I'm going to say. We do have a problem already in Vermont of building affordable housing, of regulation of the permit process. We need to find ways not to slow the process down. We need to find ways to safely speed them up. We always talk about we're going to do permit reform in Montpelier. We're going to make Act 250 more friendly. I just talked to a gentleman the other day. I went through Act 250 and then come to find out he got bad advice, and he didn't have to go through Act 50. He says, but I don't ever want to do that again. And nobody goes through Act 250 and says, oh boy, that was fun. Let's do that again. Nobody ever does that. And therefore what happens is you get a lot of these big developers who have the means to build homes, market rate homes, affordable homes, who just say, you know what, I'm just not doing that. I have enough work to do without doing that. And so yeah, that's going to run into a big problem. So when you hear about permit reform and you hear about all of that, just be mindful of what it's really talking about, because a lot of people who don't want it are going to try to tell you, oh no, they just want to go back to being unsafe and all. No, they don't. They just want to be able to be a participant in building affordable housing for Vermonters. There's bad actors with whatever you do, but for the most part, the reason we're in the housing problem that we are in is because of the burdensome problems of permits and how much they cost. But I hope I answered your questions, and I got to stop at some time because I can go all day.
Representative Labor.
I originally asked to get on Agriculture and Forestry Committee, and I'll tell you why. You want to talk about hypocritical? Ed, you'll love this one. We're talking about biomass and a renewable energy, something that's 78% all over Vermont. It's called trees. Properly managed, you can go on forever. It's a matter of cut control, property management, have a forester, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to give you an example. If you stand on the State House steps and you look due east, you're going to see this giant brick chimney. It's up there probably 180 feet. That is biomass fired and fueled by wood chips. It handles the State House complex, and it handles 20 businesses on Main Street. And it has for years. And the only thing you see coming out of that smokestack is not smoke, it's steam. It's superheated wood. So it's dried and the moisture goes up the chimney. They want to discontinue that. Why? Let me give you an idea of low-grade wood. There is very little market for low-grade wood other than OSB board, 4x8 sheets. Gets compressed, glued. You hang it up in place of plywood because it's 40% cheaper. All right. What are we going to do with all the low-grade? If you leave it in the woods, you're going to end up over time looking like Paradise, California. It burned up. Just one lightning striking. Bingo. You got 6 inches of fuel on the forest floor. If you want to take a hardwood tree and lay it down, It's going to take 100 years for that hardwood tree to become humus. A forest has a life cycle. Try to explain that to some of those people. If you go by St. Omage's over here, where the truck yard is, used to be called Shawcats Trucking, what are you going to see? You're going to see a mountain of wood chips. 300 of those tons of wood chips are from my land, because I had a forester go in there and paint some trees, because it's under current use. Because I'm in Montpelier, I can't manage my own land, so I had to hire. Then I got a professional logger to come in, who I researched his background to make sure he wasn't going to trash my land. I allowed 40 acres to go into this cut contract. Because of bad weather, it took a little longer, because we had so damn much rain at the wrong time. He couldn't access the land, because my forester says, you're not going in there and trash the land. So why are those wood chips there? Since the state burns wood chips. Since your schools burn wood chips. Since your hospital burns wood chips. That's, you grind up the pallets, the used pallets that are rotting. You grind up the unmarketable, non-commercial valuable wood to clean off the floor of the land, to be a good steward of the land. Landowners do not own the land, by the way. They rent the land from God, and they turn it over to the next generation. That's the end of my story. Am I delving into it? Yes. You know where the wood chips for that big biomass boiler in Montpelier come from? They don't come from Vermont. They're trucked over from New Hampshire. Now, who's against fossil fuel? The state proclaims they are. Why are you paying truckers to go all the way to New Hampshire? End of my story.
Next.
Hi, my name is Jay Walsh. I'm from Newport. I wasn't going to talk about either of these subjects today, but they came up by other speakers. And this is for Representative Ingalls and Representative Labor. First, housing and energy, they go hand in hand. If we're not building energy-efficient housing, then what is this whole Affordable Heat Act for? 40 years ago, you established the Vermont Energy Code, okay? There are no inspectors in the state. I worked for Efficiency Vermont, the U.S. Green Building Council, and Energy Star in Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Connecticut. Okay, most of those states have building inspectors. Okay, I've inspected probably 20,000 homes in my life, and I'll tell you, they're not being built properly, and certainly without supervision, they're not being built properly. And you've got an energy code that some of the builders that I worked with in southern Vermont, they knew nothing about the energy code. There's no teeth in it. You don't have to pass the energy code in order to get your house approved. So, you know, what's the use of even having it? So it's the state putting the cart before the horse. And that is, if you're going to have an energy standard, you need to have inspectors. And you ask, well, how do we have all these inspectors? We're going to be hiring all these outside people. 40 years ago, you could have been installing training programs in schools for exactly this purpose. This would be great jobs. You'd have a plethora of candidates to work in any town. And I do believe that, you know, the town should take some responsibility for it as well. But you need to put, I mean, the first thing is put some teeth in the energy code then. Say that it's mandatory in order for you to get a occupancy or even the transfer of ownership, you know, for a mortgage. Has to have that certificate or you don't get the mortgage. You'll start to see things change. The other subject is waste. And I think Ed, you know, has pointed out an excellent point. And the one landfill we have here services 70% of Vermont. 70% of the haulers in Vermont have to deal with Casella. They have no other choice. That is a monopoly. Only 7% of the waste that goes into this landfill is from this county alone. 7%. 20% coming from New Hampshire and Massachusetts. The rate hikes are not only in this state, but in New Hampshire, wherever Casella works. New Hampshire, New York, Massachusetts, Maine, they're pushing their rates up across the board. The other thing, too, is having one facility also means that whenever we try to do the right thing, like with recycling, or we're keeping all of our food waste out of the landfill, all they say is, well, we're just going to bring in more, to make up for that loss. You're doing the right thing, recycling, composting and such like that, which they're also in the business of. That's not a monopoly, I guess. But we're just going to fill it up with more. And since we have a commerce clause in our U.S. Constitution, it's like we can take it in from anywhere. And you can't tell us that we can't. And you know what? We'll take it to the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court stands up and says, we're not going to do anything. The Commerce Clause comes under federal regulation. Okay? If you want to control transfer of materials across the border, the feds have to enact that. Sure. Anyway, so my question is, if you could look at before spending throwing a lot of money at and taxing people on heat and everything else, I'm going to look at this bill with $225 million, exactly what it's going to be spent at. But you need to build proper housing first, because you've got a housing stock now 40 years in really inferior construction, and that's where your problem started. Thank you.
Senator Ingalls.
Well, I disagree with you on a lot of what you said as far as construction. There are enough regulations. People don't go into building inferior houses and with the intent of doing that. Other than a few communities, the vast majority of them are already regulated heavily. Standards do change as Representative Labor said, one time 16-inch walls, and now they're down to 2x8s or 2x6s, and some are 2x4s, depending on where you want to do. And so, I'm in the housing business. That's what I do. I sell properties, and, we have a difference of opinions, I guess, on where that all goes. Regulation stifles growth. It really, really does. It stifles growth, and we're seeing that right now. We're already seeing so much regulation that people are unwilling. People who are trying to build market rate homes cannot build homes to turn around and sell them in a market condition that people can afford. It's just, you can't do that. That's why VCHB is so busy right now, is because they're putting $500,000 units together when they should be probably in our market rate condition being built for $125,000 to $250,000. They're twice or higher more expensive to build than what they should be. Market rate will determine that. So other than just disagreeing on the state of conditions of homes being built, we can strive to be better, but you want to regulate, you're gonna have less building. I spend a lot of time in houses. I really do. We're going to be at a house today. We're going to be at a house today that was built in 1970. And I can tell you that probably we're going to find some GFCIs. We're probably going to find some plumbing that has changed. We're probably going to find a little bit, maybe some double taps in the panels. But even on that home built in 1970, we're probably not going to find inferior wall insulation. And maybe we might find in the attic that we can blow in some more. But again, we're not here to really disagree a lot about on that. And on Casella, I think you kind of answered the questions about how you spoke. As we said to Ed, we'll look at this. We'll get hold of people starting tomorrow, and we'll make them aware of the concerns that were being heard. Thank you.
Representative Labor, would you like to add anything? You'll pass. Okay. Do we have any other questions? Okay. No?
Right. Good morning, everybody. I feel so grateful to be amongst you, those of you who are here, because we're interested in our legislator, and I'm just so grateful that there's so many of you and to be with you this morning. Okay. I'm asking a question for both Senator Ingalls and... Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Mary Hauser. I'm from Newark. I'm asking about S66, which is an act relating to the provision of state-funded education in districts that do not maintain an elementary or high school, which was introduced by Senator Ruth Hardy. Please, if you could comment on this. And also for Representative Labor, I believe the counterpart is H258, and there's like 37 sponsors. So my question is, what is the purpose now at this time to end funding to independent schools? We have two independent high schools in Caledonia County. It's the Linden Institute and also the St. Johnsbury Academy. And then there's a few other elementary schools that would also be affected by this bill. With school choice and these independent schools have been funded for eons, and there was just a celebration of these independent schools not too long ago, about 2 weeks ago. So it's been a tradition to have school choice. So please comment, why is this happening now? What is the reasons for the cause of this? And I'm sure folks are very interested that not one size fits all in the education realm for children. These schools provide a variety of venues for children to get the education they need in order to become adults who will run our state and our country. Thank you.
And we've only got about 1 minute for each of you, so.
Imagine that. I'll do it quick. So S66, all it is the end run around Supreme Court. The Supreme Court of the United States has already decided this, that religious schools can be funded, and this is all this is. You hear about the independent schools. Well, they didn't really think the independent schools were going to put up as big of a push. The real push of this is not to fund religious schools. That's what it is. I have some good news for that. There's a lot of attention on that. The chair of education is in the community of Burton, which is a huge independent school, and I don't think that this bill will see the light of day. I think it's going to stay on the wall, and I think we can defeat it.
Representative Labor?
The only comment I have is H258 has not showed up in my committee.
Okay.
Campaign on school choice.
Okay. Did you get that? Okay. Well, thank you. So this concludes the legislative breakfast. I'd like to thank NECA for sponsoring it. I'd also like to thank Bill for doing this for the beginning of it, because he's clearly a lot better at it than I am. Thank the East Side for the great food. The legislators, Senator Ingalls, Representative Labor, the members of the press in attendance, thank you. And Todd and the guys there, we like you. Thank you very much. And everyone who showed up today, thank you very much. The next breakfast will be April 3rd with Senator Bobby Starr and Larry Labor, representative, and Mike Marcotte. So you're scheduled. If you're going to, let me know if you want to switch out with someone, and we'll try to make it work if you need to. But thank you again, and this concludes our legislative breakfast, and hope everyone has a great week. Thank you.